Well, hello, it's Sherry from Mission Partners for Christ. Sorry about that. Our guest for today's webinar was having a little bit of difficulty getting on, but I'm sure she will be with us shortly. Technology, right? That's just how it is. Let me just text her quick a minute. Does that mean we don't want you to hear about the Sierra Leone trip? We do want you to hear about the Sierra Leone trip. So I'm Sherry Postma. I am the president and founder of a nonprofit organization in the United States called Mission Partners for Christ. I am a registered nurse. And do you know that even today, there are 400 million. Yes, that's a lot. Can you imagine 400 million? 400 million people living without access to basic medical care in the world today. Mission Partners for Christ sends teams with doctors and other volunteers to places that are unreached with the gospel and also where they have very limited access to medical care. Very shortly, I am going to be joined by nurse practitioner Rosemary Fisher. And we're going to tell you about our upcoming medical mission trip to Sierra Leone, which is scheduled for March 2nd to the 11th of 2024. So I want to say thank you for joining us today for this talk. So I would love for you to hear from Rosemary when she gets on, but let me tell you a little bit about Sierra Leone, okay? Sierra Leone is located in West Africa. So get out your globe, get out your map, take a look to see where it's at. It is bordered along the water. And this country has a lot of poverty in this country. And they have very limited access to medical care. This country ranks third worldwide in terms of infant mortality. Can you imagine that? Okay, we just got Rosemary to join us here. She's coming on. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me, Sherry?
Yep, I just started talking.
Okay.
A minute, that's okay. And so once we can see your face, there we go. So I was just talking about the fact that there is a very high infant mortality rate there in Sierra Leone. And I'm not sure why we're not seeing Rosemary's face yet. Okay. You have to start your video, Rosemary. Okay, there she is. Okay. Thank you, Rosemary. I already shared with them technical difficulties. So
yeah, I couldn't get on my laptop, so I'm on my phone and I can't see you all. So I'm going to see if I can.
That's okay. That's okay. We have people that are here with us, so it's great. So, all right, I'll go back to you in just a second, Rosemary. So I was telling them in Sierra Leone that they have a very high infant mortality rate. Many of the women, they don't receive prenatal care. And so usually about 1 in 5 children die before the age of 5 years old. So, and the average life expectancy is only 56. So actually, if I lived in Sierra Leone, I'm just going to let everybody know my age. This would probably be my last year of life, okay? Which I got a lot of energy and I believe I have many years to live. And so, we want to do something about that. And so they don't have access to health care. They don't have health education there. They don't know about what to do to improve their eating habits, exercise, drinking clean water. That's a big problem there. Having high blood pressure, not even knowing that you have high blood pressure, being a diabetic, having a lot of pain and discomfort in your joints. The other thing about this country is that they faced a very long civil war, and that was from 1991 to 2002. So Yeah, so there's just a lot of heartbreak, a lot of, just encouraging them after everything that they went through. And even as I had mentioned about clean water, 68% of the people that live in the rural places, which is where we go, they don't have access to clean water, and their health is dramatically affected because they don't have that clean water. Many die from diarrhea. They don't have clean water for bathing or cooking or drinking, so their health is dramatically affected. So I just told you a little bit about all of you that are joining us today, a little bit about that physical aspect there in Sierra Leone. But now that Rosemary was able to join us just a couple minutes ago, Rosemary Fisher, thank you for joining us on this Zoom webinar, which we're streaming to Facebook today. Rosemary is a dear friend of mine, and she is a nurse practitioner. She lives in Ohio. So welcome, Rosemary. If there's anything you want to say about yourself, or we can just dive in and how about we talk about the spiritual aspect of the people there in Sierra Leone?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's no secret, Sherry and I are very good friends, and her and I will often say that our two favorite topics are Jesus and missions, and we could just talk for days and days on it. So when she asked me to join, it was an easy yes to be able to come in and talk about those two things. So thank you for having me.
Mary, thank you. And I love your background there.
Thank you.
The map, and wow, I can see West Africa.
That's right.
I could almost point right above your head is where Sierra Leone is at.
Yeah, about right here.
Yeah, there it is. Perfect.
So I'm up at our church, and this is our prayer room. So we have the world map. So I thought it's a perfect place to come for the interview today.
It's a perfect place. So,
yeah.
Okay. So I had told them a little bit about our organization, and then, just reminding them of the fact, that so many people, are unreached with the gospel. And so in Sierra Leone, can you just share a little bit about that? What's the spiritual need there in Sierra Leone?
Mm-hmm. So approximately 78% of the country of Sierra Leone does not know Jesus. So, Islam is the primary religion there. Mm-hmm. So when we come to share the love of Christ, it's so exciting. In other Muslim nations that we've been in, often after we share the gospel, the people will say, I feel like I'm hearing truth for the very first time. And so to be able to go into a country where Christ is not known by over 3/4 of their population is a true joy and a burden to get there quickly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing that is very probably my favorite aspect of going on the medical teams is not only are we bringing the message of Christ, but we are bringing something very tangible in that we can provide medical care to them. So Sherry probably said that the majority of Sierra Leone does not have access to good quality medical care, if any care at all in the rural villages. Yeah. And so when we can come in and bring something tangible that is going to improve their health, I believe it just opens such doors for the gospel, because they want to receive care. They want to receive education. And then also to just the ability to bring all the medication that we do and provide, one thing that hits me every time, Sherry, is the number of people that we treat with chronic pain. And so, as Americans, we can run to the drugstore on the corner and pick up a bottle of Tylenol or Motrin. But I would say nearly everyone that we've treated on the medical teams does not have that. And many are agricultural workers. They're working hard in their bodies. They're out in the elements all day, and they just deal with so much pain. So be able to come in and say, here's a month or two of ibuprofen or Tylenol is huge relief for them.
It is. And even, we have so many people that have stomach pain. and
Mhm.
relating to not having access to clean water, and their sanitation is so poor. And so, a couple nights ago, I woke up during the night, my stomach was bothering me. And what did I do? I took some Pepto-Bismol and I started to feel better. But they don't have that option, and many of them have intestinal parasites. So
Yeah.
even the one pill we give them, they
Yeah.
start to feel better. I mean, I'm thinking of 5 years ago when I was in a country and there was a kid, he just couldn't attend school because his stomach was always hurting. And
Mhm.
he received treatment and now he's thriving and attending school. So the things
Yeah.
that we take for granted here.
Yeah. And yeah, we don't deal with intestinal parasites and worms here. I mean, maybe on a rare occasion. But yeah, we provide anyone over the age of 2 gets an anti-parasite medication when they come in to be treated. So yeah, that's a huge lift for them. And going back to just the spiritual need there, one thing I love about going with Sherry's teams is that we will bring solar audio Bibles and leave them with the pastors there. So I was looking up well, you might wonder, why a solar audio Bible? What is that even about? So I looked up the literacy rate for Sierra Leone,
Mm.
and on average, it is 43%. So 4 out of 10 people can read. So, if 6 out of 10 can't read the Bible, if we came in and we said, here is a physical Bible, they would not be able to read it. So
Right.
specifically for women, it's only 3 out of 10 women are literate. So when we bring in the solar audio Bibles, they are programmed in the country that we're in their native language. We may be in a French speaking country, but in the rural villages, they may have a very unique, tribal language or mother tongue. So the solar audio Bibles can be recorded into a language that is their heart language. So it's a beautiful way for them to hear scripture after we leave. And it's a beautiful way to equip the pastors with a evangelism tool.
Yeah, exactly. And we're hearing of a trip that you and I were on early last year, and this spokesman, he has his, and it's about the size of a cell phone, and he's just playing it audibly, and people are all coming around and they're just listening to it. So there's just so many facets of the trip, between the medicine, the spiritual aspect, bringing the solar audio Bible. So well,
Mhm.
sometimes people wonder who we're working with, are we when we're going on a short-term trip. And we're working with an organization that is a regular partner of ours, Global Hope Network International. And they are very invested in these communities where we go and serve. And Mission Partners for Christ has served with them in Ethiopia and in Cote d'Ivoire, Chad, Cameroon, um, Togo, Benin Republic, a lot of places. And so what they do is we are going to be serving in 4 different villages. I'll tell you a little bit the names of those villages, but these are villages that are in extreme poverty. Many of them don't have electricity. They don't have access to clean water. Kids are not going to school. Many of them don't have any schools. The kids are walking, a long distance. And I have to tell you the reality that sometimes kids get abducted, or somebody gets raped just walking to school. So, we want to have a school in every area. So through the medical outreach, we establish relationships with these villagers, with village chiefs, kings. That's what it seems unusual to hear the word king, here in the US. But yeah, so it's establishing those relationships with them when the medical team comes in, because we're showing the compassionate love of Jesus Christ. So our partners continue to do a lot of health education with them. Some of it is that basic thing about hand washing. We give out a hand washing, very clear paper. It's all pictures, because going back to what Rosemary said, is so many of them are illiterate, but they don't know the importance of, after they use the bathroom, washing their hands, after they touch somebody else, after they cough, before they cook their food. So it's simple. So our partners continue over a 3 to 5 year period of time, Global Hope Network International, to come alongside of them and help them truly thrive and come out of poverty. Through the health education, I'm smiling just thinking about a dish drying rack that I saw in one area, just teaching them after they wash their dishes and just have them out to dry. Dish drying rack. And then making sure that every community has clean water, because we said so many of their illnesses are because they don't have access to clean water. So Mission Partners for Christ, we don't just go in with the team at that time, but we are completely invested in those 4 villages for the next 3 to 5 year period of time. So Global Hope works with the leaders in those villages, and we'll place a clean water well if they don't have access to clean water, set up a committee that is going to maintain and oversee that well, and then make sure that every girl and boy at least has a primary education. We don't want any other kids not being able to read or write or communicate or learn, and we pray and believe that we are going to raise up other healthcare providers and lawyers and businessmen in those communities, and then having them generate sustainable income for themselves, like through a women's center, making jewelry and sewing, and then even organic farming. Often we see that they're growing the same thing, but teaching them to grow some different things, teaching them how they can really thrive off of the land. So when we go into any area, and when we're going to Sierra Leone, we are working with partners that are going to continue the work long after we leave. So Rosemary, you served on like about, I think it's 3 short-term trips that was with Global Hope Network International. And tell me a little bit about your experience or what you saw like through Global Hope or the work that they continue to do in the villages.
Mhm. Well, I was just thinking as you were talking that, a lot of people when we go for, we'll be on the ground for 10 days when we do the medical teams. So
Mhm.
people say, what impact can you have in 1 week? And the truth is, we're just there to help open doors. I mean, the true work I feel comes after we leave, and the
Mhm.
work left for Global Hope Network International or the pastors that are on the ground there. So, I think when we do trips with Global Hope Network, even when some of the other partners that Sherry works with, we are going into countries and being immersed into the villages. A lot of people probably listening to this have traveled and been on vacations in other places, and you see tourist things and you get to see the nice thing. But when our team goes in, we are truly in the villages, truly seeing like how life is on a daily basis. Often we'll even get invited into homes, so we'll
Mhm.
get to see them. So that's pretty impactful. I was thinking too, Sherry, of the drying rack that was in Benin, that was in the Kute village, the 3rd village that we serve. So we had arrived in this village to set up our medical clinic, and one of the Global Hope Network leaders had pointed that dish rack out to us. And, the importance of that is without the knowledge that you need to get your clean dishes off the ground, a lot of them were washing their dishes and they're just setting them on the ground.
Right.
And they don't have adequate bathrooms or toilets. So, they're going to the bathroom in the bush. The rain comes, it all goes down. That's where their dishes are sitting. So just seeing that impact of that dish drying rack was pretty amazing.
Yes.
I also think of just the impact of the putting a latrine in the villages.
Mm.
But one thing that Sherry is very committed to with Mission Partners for Christ is putting in a clean water well or a latrine in every village that we serve in. And again, when we were in Benin, Martins from GHNI took us into a village that we were actually serving in the medical clinic. He said, come on a walk with me. I want to show you guys something. So he took us to a latrine that was still being built.
Mhm.
And he told us that within 2 to 3 months of a village getting a latrine, the overall health of the village starts to improve.
Yeah.
And so, I just think unless you truly experience a trip like this
Mhm.
and live in this village for a couple of days and see with your own eyes, you just do not understand the impact of what these trips can do and what these mission partners are doing. Um, yeah, uh, I did do one trip with Global Hope Network that was not with Mission Partners for Christ. Last year, I had the privilege to go with Global Hope Network to um, Egypt.
Okay.
And so we worked with the Egyptian national director for GHNI, and we got to travel throughout Egypt. We went to 4 different parts of the country, one by plane, one by train, one by van, one by car. And we got to see the impact of what this GHNI leader is doing throughout the villages. And, mostly in Egypt, the people are Islamic there. And to witness how this particular leader was received in every country blew my mind
Oh,
because he's bringing change for them. So
mhm.
everywhere we went, these people just would bear hug him, and we're so glad to meet the team that he had brought in. And yeah, that was pretty impactful to see how many places he's had impact. I think he's working total in 11 or 17 different villages. So yeah, when you get to experience that and meet these people and see them face to face, it is life changing.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosemary.
Mhm.
So we've identified a couple different areas in Sierra Leone where we're going to serve, and it might be a little difficult for me to say the name. So we're going to serve in the east area in Kanema district, Cormendi village and Mano village, and that's going to be in the east part. And then we're going to serve in the southern region of Sierra Leone. And I might have to type that in the comments, names of those villages. Do you think you can pronounce them? I wrote them down for you. What do you think,
Uh,
Rosemary?
so I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
Mokande Village and Palawahu. I
Yeah.
don't know my best shot.
It's pretty good. Sometimes I am like sharing prior to going what based on what it looks like, and they'll just clarify for me and they'll say, no, this is how you say it. So yeah, and each village, it's just different, the different names, things that are a little bit different about the villages. So yeah, can we tell them, Rosemary, a little bit about what does it look like to serve on a mission trip and arrive to the village, and what does that look like?
So I mean, clearly before we go, the work starts ahead of time.
Mm,
So, yeah, Sherry was just talking about how she will educate us on the area that we're going to serve. So it's almost like a cultural training, kind of like what is the demographics of the area, what are the major needs of the area, what's the language of the area, what obstacles might we see when we're there, and kind of what we're going to expect. So she'll usually do 3 meetings before we go, typically on Zoom. It's often people from across the country that go. So
yeah.
it's the way that we can meet. So we all introduce each other the first visit, and Sherry gives us kind of the lowdown on the country. And then typically the second and third um, team meetings are more of like our spiritual preparation. And typically all of us are doing a plan together that someone on the trip is leading. So that's a very rich time to build unity with the team and just to really come in front of the Lord and just ask Him to bless the trip and ask Him to surprise us with the miracles that we're going to see.
Mm,
So, typically, the trips are 10 days. And on average, it takes a day and a half to 2 days to actually get to where we're going. So it's a lot of travel. So we typically leave out of Chicago O'Hare for the people in the Midwest. Other people may meet us at another adjoining airport. Usually, when we get on the ground in Africa, the first night actually has a little bit of work or a lot of work. We're often tired from the travel, but we will typically all gather together and just prepare the medication for the next day. So Sherry has a very faithful team of people who meet to individually bag up all the medication. And then she has a very organized system where we will do 4 days of medical outreach. And all 4 days, we will bring suitcases that are identical. So all the medications are the same, all of the like blood pressure cuffs, glucometers to check blood glucose. There's a wound care kit or suitcase. So everything is prepared that every day it's uniform in what we bring. So the first day, we just make sure that we're ready to go. So we will typically start then our first clinic day with team devotions.
Hmm.
Before we go, Sherry will typically assign one person to lead devotions every day. Sometimes that's the first time someone's done that, so they may be stepping out of their comfort zone. But it's just a really grace-filled environment that we're just expecting to see the Lord work. So it's just a really beautiful time. One thing that I love is that for the team devotions, our partners that are in country do that with us. So, we're joining often with 20, 30, 40 pastors from that country. So often a nice group of them join us for worship in the morning. We hear them sing hymns or worship songs in their own language, and we get to sing together. We get to pray together before the day starts. So then we will drive out to the clinic site. Sometimes it's 30 minutes away, sometimes it's 2 hours. So sometimes that's an adventure in itself getting to the site.
Mhm.
And typically, by the time we arrive on the clinic site, our African partners have already set up the tarps and the clinics. The tables are already set up to go. So it's just a matter of unpacking our supplies for that day. So we have a very organized system where we have triage nurses who are intaking the patients coming in or the people coming in and finding out what they're there for. Typically, we try to limit it to about 3 complaints. So maybe they can have pain, worms, or high blood pressure, so they will get an intake by the nurse. Usually we get a blood pressure there, we check their blood sugar, and then each patient is given a triage paper that is just almost about the size of a paper about this big.
Mhm.
And it has their name, it has if they're on any medication. And then they're brought to the table to see either nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, or doctor. They may be treated by an American provider, or it may be one of the African doctors that works with us. And that's a joy too. We often have, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 6 African doctors that work with us. They're a huge, valuable resource to know, diseases endemic to that country. So after the patients are seen by the provider, then the next option is that they can receive shoes. So if children come in without shoes, we often bring on average 500 pairs of children's shoes. So if the kids come in barefooted, they're brought to the shoe table. We also bring maybe 300 to 500 pair of reading glasses. And so we have someone on the team evaluating them for reading glasses. And then the last stop that the patient would go through is for prayer and counseling. So, like I said, we have so many African partners that are pastors with us. So they will be able to hear the gospel in their own language and they will be able to receive prayer by that pastor. It's also a way to get a point of contact information. So if we are in this particular village, we may have 3 pastors close to that village. So after we leave, the pastors have the name and contact information to follow up with those people in that country. The end of the day, we go back to the house or hotel that we're staying at, and we will have like a debriefing time every night, and just to process and talk through as a team what we saw, what we experienced, what breaks your heart that day, or how we saw the Lord work. So those are just really rich times to kind of process everything that we're going through. So the 4 middle days typically look similar to that. Usually on the last day, we will have some type of a tourist outing if we're lucky. That's not always the case, but often Cher will try to do that. And then typically a 2-day journey home. So it's typically what a trip looks like.
Hey,
What
thanks. I mean, you know, um, you can like really relay a lot of information there, Rosemary, you know? Yeah. So I think it pretty much made it clear for everyone. Yeah, that prayer and counseling area is just so important. on my last trip was just less than a month ago, about 3 weeks ago, at least half of the people that came out to receive medical care, they went to that prayer and counseling area, and then they're hearing about Jesus for the first time. Now, there's no pressure to go there, but many of them want to. A trip I was on this summer with the team is before they even came to the doctor, they went to that prayer and counseling area. I was like, wow, I was so excited about it. And sometimes there are just those type of conditions that no medicine is going to treat. And to a healthcare provider like ourselves, it can seem overwhelming, but we have seen God heal people.
We have.
Yes, people that have been demon possessed and they have received deliverance, people that have been blind, people that have been deaf. And so just being able to pray for them. And like you said, and then, sometimes these people are being prayed for like 3 times, they might have been prayed for in the triage area and then with the provider and then heading over to the prayer and counseling area, even getting prayed on when they're getting their glasses. So just many different touches that the people have. So we touched on a little bit about, prior to the trip, we have a couple team meetings and we'll talk about those things to pack and requirements and where we're going to meet up, all those logistical things. But a very important part of our trip is us just preparing our hearts spiritually to serve together. So, we set up a WhatsApp group and it's a little bit different each time what we do to spiritually prepare. But Rosemary, will you share a little bit about that, maybe from a past trip, what that kind of was like? Or
Sure. So Sherry had asked me to lead the spiritual preparation for our trip back in February of this year. And we went to Guinea, and she kind of said, "What do you want to do it on?" And right away, I really felt the Lord say, "What are you expecting from me?"
Mhm.
So I don't know, I just kind of like wrote out some devotions on expecting more from the Lord.
Yeah.
I believe that the Lord wants to surprise us. Ephesians 3:20 and 21 says he will do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. And so I wanted our expectations to be up here and God to blow them away. And so what it looked like was on our what is it, like monthly, the Zoom meetings, so about once a month we meet. We would talk about that when we were on our official meeting, but I had also provided the team with maybe like 5 days of the same Bible reading. And then I provided questions. So what we would do in the WhatsApp group was give feedback after we read the passage. We could give feedback and have conversation about what we learned from that. So we can all, everyone's going to read a passage and have the Lord reveal something different to them. So it was just coming together and talking about what the Lord was revealing to us.
Mm.
Yeah, I believe, Sherry, I mean, just you hit that on just like preparing our hearts to go.
Yeah.
I mean, this is massive impact that the Lord wants to use us for. And we know when God is going to do something huge, we're going to come against opposition from the devil.
Yeah.
And just, beefing up spiritually, individually, and as a team together is a monumental part of the preparation for the trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm still, even as you're sharing about that, Rosemary, I'm remembering what we studied, many of the passages that we studied, even for our February trip. And each trip is life-changing. And so God just, spoke to me during that time. I remember the first week we were really studying about God's love for us. And then it was really about what we were going to see. And so, yeah, we were talking today at church about sometimes we're in just that plateau season, kind of, it's that routine, getting up, going to work, our regular routine or something like that. But this is just like, if you step out in faith for those 10 days, trust me, your family's going to be okay. Your job's going to be okay. It's truly life-changing each time you step out and you go, not just for the people we're going to serve, but for us. And God just really works in us during that time. So it's wonderful. And just, you were sharing about just, that sharing time that we have as a team, that prayer and devotion time, even on the trip. Or this last trip, we actually studied Matthew, and Matthew has 28 chapters. And so we read one per day, but also those local doctors that were going to serve alongside of us, and dentists. So if you're a dentist and you're listening today, we can definitely use you too. I had two Togolese dentists on the last trip, but it was wonderful because we all had studied Matthew. So even in our time of the evening time of sharing, we were talking about Matthew and what God had spoke to us in the time of our preparation prior to the trip. So it looks like you were going to say something else, Rosemary.
No, I was just fixing the camera. Sorry.
Okay. So, but some people, they're thinking, well, in light of all that's going on in the world today, and isn't there always something going on in the world today? The Bible told us that there was going to be things that were going to be going on, whether it's a war, rumors of war, disasters and things like that. But, there are, and I think I had given you there are 400 million people that are living without access to medical care. But it's over billions of people that have never heard about Jesus. And as Rosemary sits there with her Bible on her lap, can you imagine never hearing about Jesus? And we're doing this today on a Sunday, and we were in church today, and maybe they've never walked into a church, maybe they've never met a believer before. And we are the ones that are able to share the compassionate love of Jesus through the medical care, but also bring an opportunity for them to hear about Jesus. So it's really important, even though all of that things might be going on in the world, and we'll hear from people, it's just not a good time for me to go on a trip. Well, it's never going to be the right time. I mean, there's always, like as Rosemary was saying, there's always going to be obstacles and things that try to get in the way of us going. One of them that I'm thinking of right now is often people are concerned about the finances to go on the trip. And so this upcoming trip cost $2,700, and that includes the flights from the United States and back, and all of our ground transportation there, all of our meals, all of our lodging. That tourist trip, I always also get travel insurance for us. So it really covers everything. And all of the medicine is purchased through Mission Partners for Christ, all of the medicines and supplies that we are talking about, so that the money that you pay is all going toward your trip. And if you would get online, you would look and you would see that trips to go to Africa are very expensive. Flights pretty much anywhere are pretty expensive right now. So we try to keep them affordable. I can tell you, when you register for a trip and your application is approved, you get something back that tells you about fundraising for your trip, and we can give you fundraising tips. There are many people that will never step out in faith, and they will never go. There is people that God is just calling them to be the financial supporters. And so we have to give them the opportunity to sow into it financially. So I always encourage everybody to let people know that they're going, so that they can give toward the trip. And even if it's $50, $100, it goes a long way. And those people also become part of the team, even though they're not there on the ground, and you're the person that's going. God blesses them also for giving financially. We have had, so it's a letter that you can send out digitally to anybody. You can mail it, or you can send it, put it on your social media, and people give money, and it goes directly into your trip file, I guess, if that's what I don't know, I'm not using the right word right now, but it all goes toward your trip, and everybody gets a tax deductible receipt for the money that they give for the trip. So, and even you do. So if the participant paid for their entire trip, they get that. And this is a great time of year, okay? at the end of the year, people are thinking about end of the year giving. Okay. So it's a great time to be registering for a trip and sharing about the opportunity with other people because they're looking at ways to give. Do you know, I've had a couple participants that have completely raised all of the funds for their trip. They didn't give anything. They raised all of the funds for it. Well, today I was in church and the Lord prompted me that there are some people that are out there that are contemplating about this trip, that are going to hear this webinar, is going to see a post that we have on social media. And God's stirring their heart and they're concerned. They're concerned about the finances. They just have those concerns. Well, today, whoever registers today on this Sunday, on December 3rd, is going to receive $500 off of that trip coming up. Rosemary's probably thinking, maybe I should have waited and registered today. But yeah, so if people that register today are going to get the money off of the trip. So I put a link there in the comments to register for the trip. Now I want Rosemary, if she can share a couple other obstacles that sometimes people are concerned about in going.
Mhm. Well, I would just, before I say that, I'll say two things about that cost. So with the Togo trip that the team just went on a couple weeks ago, due to a family schedule, I was not able to attend that trip.
Mhm.
And because I had planned on going on that trip and then I couldn't, I was needing Africa and I started researching other trips that I could go on. And Sherry, others were like $4,000 to $5,000, everything that I looked at. So I just thought I'm so blessed to be associated with Mission Partners for Christ that provides such an affordable way to go impact the world for the gospel and really not break the bank to do that.
Mm.
So yeah, it's an incredible value. The other thing I was going to say was that you alluded to that other people have fully raised the money. We had a gal that committed to the Guinea trip this past February, and it was kind of, um, I don't know, it was, I think, going to be an obstacle because she was afraid of the cost. And it ends up that she put on social media that she was going on the trip. She contacted friends and family, and within 6 days, her
Mhm.
trip was fully funded by everybody. And she was blown away by that. So it was so neat. Like, just as we were studying, what are we expecting of the Lord? And then he blew her away with all this, like the fully funded trip in 6 days. So yeah, that was pretty exciting.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, to answer your question in terms of other obstacles for the trip, I mean, for me personally, one obstacle is use of vacation time. So,
Mhm.
I work full time. And so, a lot of people want to use their vacation time to do something with their family. I mean, don't we all want to do that?
Mhm.
So I actually, oh man, I've been going on mission trips for 10 years, but probably just 4 years ago, I actually checked with the hospital that I work for and I asked, do you do anything for mission leave? And the hospital that I work for has 2 weeks mission leave available for all full-time employees. So that has made a huge difference in me being able to typically add one more mission trip per year and still preserve some time with my family. So I would just encourage you, check with your employer if there's anything. Um, our hospital offers you can either take pay or not pay. And so, you might have to figure out what you want to do with that. But just to have the availability to go is huge. Um, yeah, I don't know, Sherry, in terms of obstacles, I think for those of us who are blessed to be parents, there's always a fear of what are we going to do with our kids when we're gone,
Yeah.
or who's going to watch them, who's going to take them to their practices or do different things. I have several people that I've just talked to about doing missions, other doctors or nurse practitioners who really have a heart to go, but it's just not the right time yet. They have kids that are busy with schedules. So I would just encourage you, if you have a heart to do this, really just submit it to the Lord. and see what he's going to work out for you. You know, um, for me, really, the beginning of last year, like the beginning of 2022, I just really felt the Lord grab hold of my heart for missions. And I felt the Lord say, you know, you need to make a decision on what this is going to mean to you and how you're going to serve me. And so I really, like, I literally got down on my knees and I was in prayer and I just told the Lord, my yes is on the table. I don't care what you ask of me, the answer is going to be yes. And then my next prayer was increase my capacity to serve you. You know, if I'm saying yes to all these things, how am I going to do it? You know, I need you to open doors, make more time, bring more money, you know, whatever it takes. And the Lord has been so faithful to that. So I would just encourage anyone, if you're teetering on going or not going, submit it to the Lord and just ask him to work it out for you. And I believe he's going to surprise you.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of a couple of things. One is Rosemary and I did a webinar in the past and we talked about fear, and Rosemary had to push past fear because often there is the fear of the unknown, like who's going on this trip, different things like that. Can you briefly address that, Rosemary?
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually pretty big for me. Yeah, fear was big. I mean, honestly, I used to have fear about getting on an airplane. Even just flying across the US, I had fear to like fly to California, which is 5.5 hours, and then say, oh, you're going to be on a plane for 16 or 17 hours flying to Ethiopia. I was like, how am I going to do this? And actually, it would have been the summer of 2021. I actually had so much fear that I reached out to a missions pastor at one of the churches, or at the church that my son was on staff as a pastor at. And he goes, let's just talk through this. And one thing that he said has stuck with me. And he said, anywhere you go in the world, people live there. So I was, we might be afraid of going to a country where, you know, the water's not safe, or we're not going to have hot water, or maybe we won't have water for a day. Maybe the electricity isn't going to work 24/7. And for him to just say, everywhere that you're going to serve the Lord, people live there. I was like, okay, that's actually pretty comforting, right? And another thing that he shared with me, he said, how effective can you be staying in safe places?
Yeah.
Really, what is safe? Um, Sherry lives in the Chicago suburbs. Downtown Chicago has a lot of places that aren't safe. I live an hour from Toledo, and a handful of us from our church go downtown and do like work in our homeless ministry. And down in those streets, that is not the safest place. But I was going there without fear. And so I thought, what am I afraid of? So, yeah, the Lord, I just really had to submit that to the Lord, and praise God, after that trip in the fall of 2021, literally, my fear is gone. So I do not have fear to get on an airplane. I believe the Lord is gonna, take care of us because we're serving him. So it's just, yeah, I don't know, when I hear people talk about fear now, I'm just like, submit that to the Lord. He's gonna take care of that for you.
Yeah. Thanks
Praise
for
God.
Yeah, thanks for sharing about that, Rosemary. I do remember when you were getting ready to go on a trip with us, your first trip to Africa in October 2019, and you were fearful.
So fearful.
You were very concerned about the flight. But in all the areas that you have gone and you have served in different villages, have you ever been afraid? Have you ever felt unsafe?
Just once.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like in Ethiopia in that 2019 trip, um,
Cool.
the very last day. I mean, honestly, we were talking about that spiritual warfare, the opposition, and there the devil does not like what we're doing in bringing the gospel to the nations. So, sometimes there is a palpable sense of darkness
Mm,
that
I get that.
I don't know, sometimes we can be oblivious to that in the US, but I think on the front lines when we're serving in countries where you are on the front lines advancing the gospel for Christ, there's opposition.
Yeah.
And yeah, in that village, there was actually a fight that had broken out. And I mean, we were on the bus ready to leave,
Yeah.
but it was like reality that these there's a spiritual battle going on. And so yeah, probably out of all of them, that was probably the most, or probably the only time I was ever afraid. And it was very temporary. Are we out of our comfort zone? Yes. Is that a good thing for us? Yes. It helps us to rely on the Lord. And I believe like that's actually one of my favorite things of being like serving in a third world country or a developing nation
Mhm.
is that you do not have the conveniences to rely on yourself or, the American way of life. You are solely relying on the Lord. And so I believe that it is a way to just bubble up your faith and grow like a dependence and a reliance on the Lord. And hopefully learn how to bring that home with you to have that mentality when you get home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So another thought had come to me when you talked about, often you approach somebody even last week. I love how Rosemary is mobilized for missions. And a comment just from somebody was, well, I've got kids at home and things like that. But I have to tell you, two of the people that traveled with us their kids were younger, school age, and their husbands took care of the kids. We're not gone a long time, 10 days, but what about those grandparents? Sometimes those grandparents want to take care of the kids too and help out, and it gives them an opportunity to help out. So, just be open minded, pray and submit to the Lord. And if He's prompting you to go, follow that prompt. So, you know what? Is there a couple scriptures, Rosemary, that kind of ones when we were thinking about this, about even though everything that's going on in the world today, that kind of pushes you forward to continue to do this?
Mhm. Yeah, I had brought my Bible along, and just as you were talking, I just opened up to two passages that had come to my mind. And one is Mark 16, verse number 15. And it's where Jesus tells them, go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone, everywhere. And so, one thing that I love about Sherry is her adventurous heart, because kind of like the more rural, off the beaten path that we go, that's where she brings the teams. And I remember we were in Benin and we were on a road. There had been a lot of rain and it was a pretty muddy road. And I just remember going, I actually have the picture from this particular time is the screensaver on my laptop.
Mm.
And I remember driving that and thinking, we are literally going to the ends of the earth. Just there was nothing but just a dirt road and just like trees covering everywhere. And I remember even in Guinea, we were in a pretty rural area. We had taken a mission aviation fellowship flight. That if we would have driven, it would have been like 13 hours, but we were able to fly there in like an hour and a half. And then we had, what was it, 2.5 or 4 hour drive. And so just really going to the ends of the earth. So when we hear preach the good news to everyone everywhere, I feel like this is the opportunity to do that. Another verse I was thinking of this afternoon is Romans 10, starting at verse number 14. And it says, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him?
Mhm.
How can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is what the scriptures mean when it says, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. And I love that passage because we're looking, going back to Sierra Leone, 78% of this country does not know about Christ. How are they going to hear if people do not go and tell? So I feel if there's a biblical mandate, we are directed to be the people to do that. How are they going to hear if no one goes? How are they going to hear if no one tells them? So, yeah, those would probably be the two scriptures I'd love to share today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So, when you step out in faith, God provides physical healing to the people and then also the spiritual in giving them an opportunity to hear about Jesus. I can't tell you how many villages I've gone to. And even on my last trip, less than a month ago, the chief of the village, who has a lot of medical needs and high blood pressure, the question that he often asks me is why? Why did we choose their village out of all the villages in the communities and the countries all around the world? Why did we choose? And God reminds me because he has not forgotten about his people and he loves them. And I see it over and over again in the villages that God connects us with to serve with. He orchestrated that long time ago that our teams would go. But we can't go if we don't have a team to go with us. Oh, Rosemary and I might want to get on a plane and go, but we're going to be a lot more effective. We're going to be able to provide a lot more medical care, the eyeglasses, so you don't have to be in the medical field to go along with us. We've had retired attorneys and CPAs and teachers. Teachers are great for doing health education. We have all the tools already printed up and they include scripture. And so you can just share because you're used to speaking in front of a group of people. But if you have a heart to serve, that's who God is calling. Those who want to grow in their faith and trust, and those who just really want to make a difference. So we invite you to join us for the trip, March 2nd to the 11th in Sierra Leone. So we hope you'll join us. I am going to ask Rosemary Minna here, I know she shared this a little bit about how missions has just truly changed her life. She said in the fall of 2021 that her life has been changed and it's exciting. Rosemary just recently started a nonprofit organization just for missions. So will you share a little bit with everybody, Rosemary, about how your life has been changed serving?
Yeah. How do you summarize that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like twofold. I mean, the opportunity to serve on missions trips has definitely stamped a new purpose into what I feel my calling as a believer is. But ultimately, it's the good news of Jesus Christ that has transformed my life, and I have a desire to tell others. One of the pastors that we met in Benin told me this summer, I wrote down this quote I want to share with you. He said, "As long as there are still people unreached by the gospel, I have no rest." And I just love that because I know that that's my heart and that's Sherry's heart too, and anyone that serves with us. But yeah, after we returned back from the Benin trip in 2021, and I'd mentioned earlier when we're on the ground, seeing life, doing life, seeing their homes, living life, experiencing what they go through every day, just really opens your eyes to the obstacles that the pastors there have in terms of sharing the gospel. So when we were in Benin, we had, I believe, like 42 Africans on our team with us. 25 were pastors. And we had hundreds of people on that trip accept Christ. And so then, we go home and we're, task them with the opportunity to follow up, plant churches, go share the gospel, lead discipleship, bring those solar audio Bibles to the people. And I realized after we got home that many of those pastors don't even have any transportation. They're walking on foot 2, 3, even 5.5 hours to do their ministry. So I felt like the Lord speak very clearly to me that he was going to use me to raise money to buy motorbikes. So talked to a couple people. I talked to Sherry. She's kind of partnered along with me. And so what started out as just buying motorcycles has now turned into a nonprofit organization to support pastors and missionaries in developing nations. So not only have we provided 5 motorbikes and a car for pastors in Africa, we've been able to give money for an income generating project. We've given money for church benches, pastoral training, even money for their children. In Africa, everybody has to pay a fee for school. That's here. Most people go to public school and it's free, but their kids have to pay. So, the Bible tells us that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord to bring about more workers. But after seeing how hard the work is, I just really I feel like the Lord stamped into me that they need help. So I started a nonprofit organization this summer called Momentum in Missions that is strictly to give lift to pastors and missionaries in the developing nations, specifically the ones that we've partnered with through Mission Partners for Christ, and help them in their ministry.
Mm. Well, congratulations, Rosemary, on starting that nonprofit. You have impacted many lives already and supported missionaries, and I'm excited to see where that's going to go. And just so wonderful to see how missions has changed your life. I truly believe it has changed the life of everybody that has gone and served if you step out in faith. So we would love to have you join us March 2nd, heading to Sierra Leone, West Africa. So registration is open through Friday of this week for the trip because we want to go ahead and we want to purchase our flights. So I put in the comments, and we'll put it on our Facebook and social media pages where you can register for the trip. If you have any question at any time, you can reach out to me. I'm here. I personally lead the trip. I'm the person that you interact with. I'm the person that answers all of your questions, and I would be happy to do so. We'd love to have you go with us. So I had a couple questions, and one was a comment from Tim, and thank you, Tim, for joining us today. And Tim said, wow, $2,700 is an amazing value for a trip to Africa. So thanks for your comment there, Tim. And the other one is, he asked if it's possible to integrate the need for local sustainable income with setting up a longer-term pharmacy to provide those pain meds like the Tylenol and things like that. And I do know that in a couple areas where we've gone in countries, they have set up clinics in those areas, and that would be our desire, work along with the government to have a clinic in place and do a lot of health education. So in a couple of areas where we've gone, they do have a clinic, and that's the wonderful thing about us continuing to communicate with those doctors that are there in that country. The last trip I was on, we had a physician and a midwife that was with us, and they were able to follow up on some of the most serious cases. But yes, we would very much like for each of those areas where we're serving to be able to have income so that they will be able to purchase the medicines that they need or have them available at a low cost. So do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing any other questions. Let me
I
see.
would say, in regards to that last question about long-term, setting up a pharmacy would be great, but I know that I've seen on our previous trips, we don't want to bring any medication home. So I've seen you give suitcases of medication to the local doctors there to use in their clinics. So that's, beautiful and generous gift to them.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemary.
Mhm.
So, well, I think that wraps it up for today. So, Rosemary, I love spending about the last hour with you, just sharing with you, talking about Sierra Leone. And can you imagine just about 3 months from now, you and I, 3 months from now, we're going to be in Sierra Leone. So if you're listening to this video, go to our website today, register for the trip. Remember, you're going to get $500 off if you register today. So, and if you have any questions, just reach out to me, info@missionpartnersforchrist.com, and our website, missionpartnersforchrist.org. So thanks for joining us. Thank you to my very dear friend, Rosemary Fisher. Thank you for joining us. Okay, take care. Until next time. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye. Hope you come with us.
Thanks.